Hey everyone, Dan Gavosden here. I hope you're all staying safe and healthy during this very strange time. Already, I've heard from so many of you who've reached out to express your joy that the Amazing Spider Talk show will be continuing through our collective quarantine. It's amazing to me how valuable normal things become during times of crisis like this. For me, normal is best represented by talking with Mark about Spider-Man and my weekly trips to my local comic shops, buying new comics each Wednesday and digging through back issue bins each weekend, hoping to fill in holes in my various B-title collections. But my local comic shop experience wouldn't be anything without the many wonderful people who frequent the shops and the staff who manage the stores week after week. I love print comics and the people who love print comics. There's a sort of bond that I think we all feel that keeps us coming back week after week. It's about the comics, yes, but it's also about this feeling of unity. We comic fans tend to be a touchy group of people. Sometimes we get characterized as overly nitpicky or easy to anger, but I think it's only because we love comics so much. Every part of the weekly ritual has become sacred in our minds, and we would do anything to defend it. So don't you dare back comics into a corner, because we've got its back and we aren't backing down. If you're like me, your fear of the coronavirus extends beyond your friends and family and into your community. Small business owners everywhere are feeling the pinch and are having to make plans to accommodate the potential of months of closure. That includes local comic shops. The response online has been varied, but the fears of an overprotective lover of comics have begun to grow inside of me. In my home of Los Angeles, shops were forced to close with a shelter-in-place order. With no clear plans in sight, as of this recording, many are staring down the barrel of paying rent, book fees, and more. Then, on March 23rd, Steve Geppi, chairman and CEO of Diamond's parent company, Geppi Family Enterprises, announced in a letter to retailers that March 25th will be the last new comic book day and that shipping would end on April 1st for an indefinite amount of time. As Diamond is the only major distributor of comics, this meant that all these stores wouldn't be able to order new books, and that print comics as a medium would effectively be on pause. That caused my mind to race to a variety of conclusions. Was this the death of print comics? Would Marvel and DC continue to publish books digitally and cut out comic book shops? Would my favorite stores be forced to close up shop? None of these questions were good, and with no answers at my disposal, I thought the only rational thing to do was to reach out to all my friends in comics retail. So today, I've assembled 4 interviews with some of my favorite people selling comics. They've got a variety of reaction to the news and the new world that we live in. I hope you'll find a sense of calm in their reasoned responses, and that you'll consider any number of tactics that they describe to help keep our beloved stores open. Right now, the most important people in comics are our retailers, and it's up to us to make sure they survive this incredible ordeal. First up, I talked to my former local comic shop manager, Ali Alleman, from Arsenal Comics and Games in Ventura, California. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Well, hey everybody, it's Dan Gavosden here again, and I am here actually with my old friend, Ali Alleman from now Arsenal Comics and Games. You're the manager there?
Yes, sir. I'm the manager of one of the locations.
Tell us a little bit more about your shop, I guess about like the clientele. Like, what do you guys do? What is your specialty?
It's been cool. I'm very new to the store, so I'm still learning a lot, which is fun. But basically, our main thing is this POS called Comic Hub. So it's very interactive with the customer. You can add different covers and how many you want and look at previews all through this app, and people love it. And that's our main kind of sales force there. But then also what's really cool is he sells tons of CCGs, so collectible card games, and just games in general, which I'm new to, and I'm having the best time ever because the customers come and play, and it's just a really cozy environment. It's really cool.
That's really cool. And you have, I know you from Collector's Paradise, but you have like a history. You've worked at like, I don't know, 4 or 5 shops by now in your career?
Yeah, this is my 3rd, but each one has been several years, so...
Yeah, so you're a seasoned veteran here for the most part of these stores, would you say?
So. Yeah, definitely.
So, I'm going to get right to it. We're talking to all these, store owners and managers and clerks and things like that. Let's take it through time. Like the initial things start changing for businesses. You're told that you're not allowed to, have customers in. What was the plan for your store? Like, how did you guys change and how has that kind of evolved with time?
Yeah, well, it was sort of sudden. It was like 2 weeks ago. Wednesday was normal, just a little bit slow, and then all of a sudden Thursday, everything started shutting down, and we introduced Lysol wipes and gloves, and I started wearing a mask at work, and it was sort of like tons of anxiety, like what's going to happen by the next week. Every single day, more and more counties were shutting down, and it was inevitable that something was going to happen. And then I think, what was it, Friday night? Finally it happened. So maybe it was Thursday night. But anyway, the next day, I mean, the doors are closed. We decided to do, curbside pickup, which is one-on-one interaction from a car window, pretty safe. And we're just relying on online sales, our eBay. We have 2 stores full of collections and games and tons of stock. So there's that. So we're hoping to rely on, getting some of this older product out and hoping that our subs show up in their cars safely,
Does your store, I mean, you're in Ventura, right? Do you guys have a lot of kind of like walk-up customers? Is that, I mean, because that's basically eliminated.
Yeah, I mean, you have to admit, as a comic book store goer yourself, there's the good feeling of going on a Wednesday and looking at the rack and being around other people. And then we have the gaming community. So Friday Night Magic canceled, D&D canceled. That's a big portion. That's like half of our store gone. And yeah, of course, like foot traffic, we're on basically Main Street, gone.
Although I'm sure gaming, there's a certain level of interest that is renewed during the time like this where you're just stuck inside, that's all you have to do.
Yes. The week before I sold out of Pandemic. All right. B, sold tons and tons of Magic booster boxes. So people are like drafting the hell out of their decks right now. Everyone should be scared when this is over. Everyone's going to have the beefiest decks ever.
So, a lot of our listeners, they show up to the store on Wednesday or whenever they get there. And I mean, if they're listening to a Spider-Man podcast, they're probably Wednesday warriors, but like they might not understand the kind of ins and outs of like how when they arrive at the store, the comic kind of has found its way there and how people make money off of these things. We learned just today, like a couple hours ago, that there was this letter that seemed to have kind of like, I don't think the letter leaked, but the news of this leaked, which then kind of prompted this letter being posted from Diamond, or the head of Diamond, which is the distribution, for nearly all comics, out of Maryland, of all places, that they were not going to be printing and shipping comics past April 1st. Can you talk about can you talk about the regular chain of events from Diamond and how you guys interact with them, and then what it would mean for Diamond to just not ship those books?
Well, here's the thing. You have to look at comics on the shelf as money sitting there, right? So if Diamond shipments still come in, that's a bill every week. If they stop after 2 weeks, we no longer have to pay that bill of new comics that probably won't sell. So basically, we pay for this stuff up front, or some stores have, whatever, there's different situations. But for the most part, you pay for these comics up front and hope that they sell. That's the entire business. So in my opinion, this is great. And I feel like a lot of people agree, because most stores have collections that they bought off of customers, or have like tons and tons of new back issues to sell. It's just, how do I sell that, So
you actually see this as a bit of a relief, because it kind of forces the hands of the big two to kind of like put everything on pause for a bit. Do you think that that's going to kind of happen? It seems like, even in the letter from Diamond, there was a weird push for digital sales of comics. Is that a fear that like something like this could step on the toes of single issue floppies and push that audience to another platform? Or
it's just, if that would have happened, it would have happened already. There's just a difference between people who read comics on their phones and people who collect. They're different beasts. And to your point about the big two, well, we're hoping that they do returnability for all these books, but it's a risk on their part, but it's what we need, kind of.
What does that mean for the person who doesn't know like how returning books works?
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot of companies that do this with their number ones, or just, certain situations will call for it. The publisher says, order as many of this book as you want, get all the incentive variants you want, and then at a certain date, months down the road, you can return all of it for diamond credit. You can send it all back, rip the covers off. And so that's super helpful in a lot of situations. And this is a dire situation where we kind of need that to happen if they want to keep selling books. I had to do my final ordering for Empire, which is Marvel's huge event that's leading into summer's huge event. If they don't push this date back, I bet it's going to be the worst event release of all time. I ordered probably 15 copies. It's weird.
Do you have a presumption about that? Do you think that we're going to ultimately just see this weird several month gap in content, or just It'll move to some digital exclusives to kind of tide over, everybody? Because there's going to be a desire for things to read. Not that there's not endless back catalog, but we all know that back catalog is just not as appealing to people, although they might have to suddenly find it way more appealing.
Yes. Well, that's a really good question. And we know that, production is stopped on movies and TV. So it's new content has halted for a minute. I always agree that, if you haven't read Justice or Killing Joke, that's a brand new freaking book to you. So I hope that the publishers, I think that they would, because again, I really think digital readers and comic book collectors are different people. You got the speculation market and all sorts of things, but I think that, you're right. There's just going to be a gap in content, and they'll have to use that time however they're going to use it.
Speaking of speculators, I think this Wednesday's the March 25th's books seem to be there's a certain collector's itemness to the March 25th books. Nobody can leave and stores are closed and people are still going to want those books. Will they sell? Will they sell? The speculators, they're going to brave COVID-19 to get their mint edition of X, Y, and Z. So, you said the store is kind of operating on back catalog and eBay. I don't want to spell doom or anything for you guys, but how long do you guys think your inventory can last? I mean, what is the, let's say you do an excellent job selling it all, what is the next have you guys discussed the next stage of the store if this were to expand beyond that, or we're still so early on it's not even worth speculating about?
Well, truly, Dan, in a perfect world that we sold all of our product, all the stock that we have, it would be months and months. Yeah. We have so much crap. We buy collections all day, but 80% of that will never sell ever, because that's just how comics work, right?
Right.
So, it's really up in the air. The real test will be this Wednesday. I would love to do this interview again next week, honestly, and be okay, here's what happened, because this week will tell us what the future will bring, and we just have to pray that April 19th is truly the deadline for this. However, I will say afterwards, so personally I don't like to go to bars that much. I am dying to go to every bar in Ventura right now, so I do feel afterwards everyone will be out buying stuff.
I do wonder about that, actually, because you have a limited comics budget, like a lot of people do. They go to the store and they say I've got X amount of dollars to spend on books this week. For someone like me, I just buy the Spidey stuff. And so, my budget is, whatever they're putting out, and it tends to be pretty low, although increasingly large these days. And my curiosity is, you suddenly flood the market with all these books that were supposed to come out. Are people going to come into the store and get caught up? Or are they just going to buy what they would normally buy? And I think that's a real gamble for something that's serialized like this, if they do go through and just keep putting stuff out digitally, because, they want to make money, I'm sure, and they're not going to turn that market down, these big two publishers. I do worry for you guys if, it is a long protracted thing, and people take out loans and things like that. It's not like this is essential living stuff, for some of us it is, but, will people get caught back up, or will this be kind of like a phantom zone, period in comics? I guess time will tell, as you were saying.
Yeah. And I honestly see these people who seem to have the biggest pockets. Who knows where they make their money? It's California. but they always have money. And when the virus lifts, like, all these people who have inexplicable sources of income will come in, I promise, and they'll buy games and they'll play D&D and all this stuff. So I'm trying to be very positive about it. And
Sure.
I think I'm fairly steeped in good logic there, but we'll see.
Absolutely. Well, if it does lift, I will be there to buy you a beer. So
Yes, Ventura beer.
To that day. Oh yeah, we'll go to the pizza place, the pizza and beer company place on Main Street.
Yes, I've heard of this place.
It is pretty good. It's pretty good. All right. Well, Allie,
right.
Thank you so much for giving me some of your time.
Absolutely.
I wish the best for you guys, and plug your
Thanks.
shop again.
Arsenal Comics and Games, Newbury Park, and Ventura. And you can go on our website and order some of the sweet stock that I just mentioned at arsenalcng.com.
Thanks again to Allie for talking to me. Her optimism was infectious. If you're in Ventura County and want to help out Arsenal Comics and Games, I implore you to go to their website and make some purchases. Next up, I wanted to visit New York City, the epicenter of the United States coronavirus outbreak. So I called up my friend Demetrius from Anyone Comics. Well, welcome back, everybody. Today, I am lucky to have with me Demetrius Fragiskatis. Demetrius, you are the store handler and owner of Anyone Comics. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your store?
Sure. We opened up 3 years ago. The name was conceived based on the idea of selling comics in general to just an audience that isn't embracing them, that thinks that they're for just a specific group of people. Figure people walking by the, cross the street would see the name Anyone Comics and think, hey, I'm Anyone, and come in. We do a ton of events and stuff. We've hosted 24-hour comics. We do drink and draws. We've hosted like some stand-up comic shows and stuff. We've had art galleries. The idea is to build up a community and have the community itself, Crown Heights, where we're located, embrace comic books, kind of understand there's, more to it than just the movies and stuff.
So you're at Crown Heights. You're kind of at the epicenter of this whole coronavirus thing right now. I mean, the world has kind of shifted its eye to New York, as it tends to do. And, I guess I'm curious, regarding your store and this whole thing. Like, how have things changed over time? Things have escalated in New York. How have you as a store adapted to that? And I guess could you guide us to where we are at today with you guys and what your thinking is?
There's things I have control over and things I don't have control over, right? So, for example, the publisher's release schedule is where a lot of comic books are now not being distributed because of what's going on in everyone's respective states and stuff. I don't have any control over that. And the other thing I don't have control over is the fact that the state government in New York has mandated that non-essential businesses, which comic book stores fall under, can't operate right now. So as a result, I've let go of my staff so they could apply for unemployment and certain grants as quickly as possible, including the Bink Foundation, which is helping retailers, bookstores and stuff. And so I'm focusing what I do have control over. We haven't, being a 3-year-old store, we haven't opened up, we haven't done online purchases really. And deliveries are allowed in New York City. So I put my focus on that. I've taken as many customers' addresses as possible. And I'm teaming up with a program called Comic Hub, which was founded by Stu Colson, who has a comic book store in New Zealand, of all places, called Heroes for Sale, where it's a POS system that marries directly to the online services, like websites and stuff, right? And so people through that app are able to manage their pull lists and, kind of see what they have and make adjustments from there that I would see. We're not fully immersed in that program just yet. So for now, I've just taken people's lists and I've taken their, addresses, their credit card information, and we're just kind of doing this all manually and slowly. Thankfully, a lot of people are patient and they, I think, understand the pressure that I'm, under and are totally forgiving. Of course, there's the Wednesday Warriors who need their books tomorrow, so those people get special attention, I suppose, tomorrow, right? Squeaky wheel and everything. Yeah, beyond that, so there's a lot of, I noticed there's a lot of, I guess, anger, maybe surprise. I'm not sure. There's a lot of emotion because Diamond isn't distributing comics on April 1st and the weeks afterwards. I think that's the right move. I don't think people should be upset that new comics aren't coming in. I think, putting it on pause is the right move. I mean, the fact is, for stores that are able to operate, because there's other stores that, you're not even, I'm imagining the shelter-in-place states, which New York isn't at the moment, but the shelter-in-place states, you're not, I'm assuming, even able to operate on deliveries and stuff. So they're screwed either way. But stopping comics, there's still like millions of comics that are out there in print that we haven't read. Like, I would say now's the perfect time for people to check out a series that they thought they didn't have a budget for. Whatever you budgeted for that particular week, you now can try series that I'm sure, back issues that comic book stores, I'm sure, are sitting on. The good thing about being the comic book store that we are, most of my customers don't follow the comic book news online or any of the Twitters or Reddits or anything like that, Reddit posts or anything like that. So they don't even know that comics have stopped, and plenty of them are just reading stuff that are coming infrequently anyway.
Sure.
That that they're like if we behave like it's another week, then I think. And I might be in a unique situation in this case, but if I behave like it's another week, there's not going to be a disruption in the business, besides the fact that I could only deliver at this point.
I've heard from some people that the Diamond News was actually a relief to them. Like they didn't have to place orders or things like that. I mean, like financially speaking, is that the case for you as well?
Yeah, the only other domino that needs to drop right now is that rent moratorium that everyone's pushing. If that rent moratorium happens, then there's a pressure, that's off my shoulders at that point. I have a chance to change my business model a little bit without like having this ticking clock of, the landlord demanding rent that day. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But yeah, other than that, it's just one less bill to pay. Again, I certainly have inventory. I have great books that people can try out anyway. So, yeah.
The big wheels are going to still, I think, keep on turning, with Marvel and DC and Image and the publishers, I would imagine. I mean, Marvel and DC are kind of this unstoppable thing. And there's this talk about kind of like continuing with things digitally, and maybe having like some big backlog when things do finally start back up again, because things aren't going to start back up again at the same time everywhere. I don't think, at least it doesn't seem nationally that people are really working in unison together. Maybe the United States will get its act together, but I am curious about your feelings about that. Is there a fear amongst comic shop owners that this kind of like digital move will kind of like cut comic books out of the game for a little while?
I think that's always been a fear among owners. I came in right after Comixology and the Marvel app and all that stuff, when that stuff was like really cemented and entrenched in that was always an option for my customers. I opened up anyway. It was an option for 10 years before we opened. So I know that when people come into the store, they've made the choice to support the store by buying the copies here rather than buying them digitally. And I'm counting on that same support later on, for the upcoming months and stuff. I think digitally, in my experience when I was working in Midtown Comics, has actually helped the industry more than anything. Has helped print books more than hurt them, actually. The people who feel obligated to just read everything from Marvel are able to consume it digitally. But then when that one story arc really strikes you or connects you, or maybe that one piece of art really, stands out, there's a different sense in just coming to the store and buying it physically and stuff and feeling like you physically own it and being able to revisit the pages and stuff. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm oversimplifying. I don't want to come off dismissive, but at the same time, we don't know. I mean, I'm coming from the standpoint that everybody who's involved in the industry in any capacity has a care for it, and no one's out to screw anybody over. I mean, if people are out to like kind of help themselves, like the publishers are maybe with the digital thing, well, it's not going to come with a malicious intent to screw over the retailers at all. And I think as we get out of this, they'll send some amenities, they'll extend their hand to help us, as I've seen them do beforehand,
Yeah, I mean, if they really wanted to cut you guys off, all they would have to do is make their books $1 cheaper online, and they could disrupt the market overnight. But they don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
They want you guys to exist, and
yeah.
My fear is that this becomes an excuse to do that. But it's not based in any real thing other than like my own precious feelings about comics, which means I'm always going to be terrified for them. And
Sure.
I've heard from, I worked in comic shops, and I've talked to enough comic shop owners that I know that for them the sky is always falling, or they're always looking for a reason to say comics are over. This could be that chance. I mean, there will be a day where digital becomes, I think, the prominent way that people read these things, because paper is just it feels a little bit nostalgic at this point. Maybe you feel the other way, which you should, because you're owning a store. But everybody is looking for a reason to claim the sky is falling, I feel.
I don't know. I mean, up until now, we've had a 20% increase in our sales year after year. What you're saying is really logical, and it makes a lot of sense. Humans don't really make much sense. I think at one point, radio was going to be replaced by television. I think consuming comics digitally and consuming them physically is just brings out different senses of aesthetics and stuff, I think, overall. So it hasn't happened.
I think you're right. Like, maybe I am thinking too logically about it. And really, like, when we talk about comics, we should be talking about the realm of emotions and
absolutely
things like that. Well, this is really great. So, Demetrius, if anybody wants to kind of like interface with your store and you, like, how would they do that? Like, do you have a website set up for them to order from?
We have a website. It's not order ready just yet, but you can email us through the website, anyonecomics.com. You can also just email directly at info@anyonecomics.com. Again, we are doing shipping for people who live in Crown Heights. We're doing bike delivery messenger bikes and stuff, and along with and we'll be giving people recommendations too, because if there's one thing that a comic book store experience has, it's just being able to, I guess, customize and respond to the person on an emotional level rather than on an algorithmic level. You know what I mean?
Right. So if I'm going to a store right now to like buy some back catalog, what's the book you're pushing on me? What are you feeling most excited to share with people right now?
Wow, that's a really broad question, but I guess from last week's books, I was really excited to push Starship Down from Dark Horse. That was something I haven't seen before. It's just archaeologists uncovering a spaceship seemingly in the Neolithic era, and just it's all approached in a very kind of grounded level that, I'm used to, these days I've been reading things like, a Protector with the James Stokoe covers and stuff, just like weird, like Little Bird from Image last year, and, anything by, Daniel Warren Johnson, he did Murder Falcon. I've been reading a lot of like really busy, super, like, this really artistic stuff. So Starship Down just kind of went to a level of, this is a, bunch of political people trying to decide what this information means, finding a space shuttle from that time period. I really dug it.
Sounds like a lot to think about during a pause like this in all of our lives. Well, Demetrius, thanks again. I wish you the best of luck. And on those deliveries, I hope you're staying safe and healthy.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dan. You stay safe, too.
I wish the best to Demetrius and everyone in New York. If you are in Crown Heights, be sure to give Anyone Comics a ring and pick up some new books. Next, I decided to call up my own local comic shop to see how they were doing. So I called up Nick at Collector's Paradise to get the scoop on the changes they had in store. I will note that this interview was conducted on Wednesday the 25th, the same day as the Diamond cancellation. Since then, things have changed for Collector's Paradise, and they no longer are allowed to offer curbside service. So let's go to my interview with Nick. Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm really excited to have my friend Nick Ignacio on from Collector's Paradise here in Winnetka Boulevard in Los Angeles in the Valley. You are actually, one of the people that works at my comic book store, which is fun to talk about.
I know.
It's a unique opportunity.
I get to see you like once a week.
Yeah. For a little too long, I'm sure, each time. They're like, get out of the store, Dan.
I think my favorite part of like working at a shop is like being able to, when I'm not like super busy, like being able to like, chat with customers and regulars,
You guys might be crankier about Nick Spencer's Spider-Man than I am.
I'm so cranky, but I don't really read it, so I stopped reading it. I know Ryan, one of my employees, still reads it, but also like kind of complains about it. Kind of like, I think, like how you feel,
Yeah, he and I are very simpatico. But enough about Spider-Man. We're here to talk about like comics in the time of coronavirus. The most pertinent topic of all, at least for people like us. I'm a big movie guy, and it's been a real bummer to see the movie industry kind of shuttered. Although you can also go on Netflix or whatever. But I have a really soft place in my heart and wallet for print comics, and that's where Collector's Paradise comes in. My weekly trip to the store and to see you guys. I mean, there's certainly something to, like you were saying, going in and seeing friendly, familiar faces. And that's why I chose your store. But can you tell our listeners at home, I mean, I can evangelize your store, but like, why don't you do it? What's so special about Collector's Paradise?
Well, I think that one of the main things we like to do is we don't treat it like, you have to treat it like a customer service business, right? It's not about like selling them product. You're selling them an experience, I guess, is like the best way to describe it. Like when someone comes in the store, we make sure we're friendly and we're nice. And then, obviously don't like bombard them immediately if they're a new customer. But like, you let them browse a little bit, and then you make it a point to like know that they exist and that we're there to offer any books that they need, And then eventually, like a lot of the times, like, they're just somebody who walks in, you'll recommend one book, and then they like it so much that and then, over the course of months or years, they'll just like you kind of have this relationship where like they come to you for recommendations and stuff like that. I think it's something like we like to garner as a company, right? In all three of our stores, we make sure that we have employees you can kind of do that, right? And we'll have people who will come in only on the weekends because that's like my weekend guys there, and they always like his recommendations. So I think a lot of it has to do with that, right? Besides our subscription service, which we do, and everything's online, so your pulls are very easy to sort of manage. That's like another element that we do. But I think the main thing is, having people come in, and expect like a good experience.
Yeah, Nick, you've been very dangerous to my wallet and my bookshelf. You make a lot of great recommendations, and I just buy them right up, which has been great to kind of expand me beyond my Spider-Man kind of realm of things. You like to push kind of stuff I've never heard of on me, and it certainly opened my world up a little bit. Now, you and I both live here in Los Angeles, and, I guess more importantly, are employed in Los Angeles, and, stores have been shut down for, what are we approaching, a week now?
It'll be a week. No, it feels like a month, but I think they officially shut down Friday. So it's only been 1, 2, 3, 4 days.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yeah.
I've been talking to some owners of shops in New York who, are going through a very different thing than us. I mean, similar, but like the magnitude is quite different. Still the same here in Los Angeles. It's not the same. And, you can drive from one place to another in less than an hour, but you're not going to go anywhere and do anything, unfortunately, because everything is closed. And, for me, my one outing is to the comic book store, and you guys have kind of changed things up a little bit. So I'm wondering if you could tell listeners at home about like, how has your store adapted to the coronavirus, I guess up until the news that we got yesterday from Diamond?
Yeah, so like when we were kind of anticipating the sort of shelter in place that San Francisco enacted, last Monday, right? We're kind of anticipating because, that usually happens, like it happens up north first and then it kind of trickles down to Los Angeles. I feel like that's always the case. And so when they announced on Thursday that we had to close because we're a non-essential business, we emailed all of our customers and told them, hey, this is what's happening, right? We're going to be closed, but we can offer mail order, right? Shipping. Because we've always done that, right? We just never did it like to all of our subscribers, right? And we also offered curbside, where you never have to leave your car. There's really just like me in the store, and you call and I'll ring you up over the phone, and then you call again when you're outside, and I just drop off the books and you just grab it, right?
How does that work? Are you in like a hazmat suit and you're like running out your cars?
No. I mean, I'm already always washing my hands now because of this whole thing. I feel like this is the most I've washed my hands my entire life, which is kind of a sad thing to say now that you think about it, right? Right? I feel like more people are washing their hands than they've ever washed. At least the length of time you spend, because 20 seconds is a long time. But if you think about it, right? And so yeah, like I'm constantly washing my hands. I come out with gloves because I'm just wearing gloves now. I'm not wearing any masks because I think you're only supposed to do it if you are sick.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the actual thing is. And so yeah, and then I literally just like, if you don't want like any contact, I will leave it at the door, like, and then you just come in and grab it. Or, most people are just kind of like grab it, we're like 6 feet apart, if we're chatting a little bit outside, and then that's it. They come pick it up and go. And that was kind of the model. We also like got a huge response from our customers. They did like a really great job of like really supporting us. These past few days, they've been, replying to all of our emails and telling us what they want to do. We do have credit cards on file. Like that's how you have to, as part of the subscription, you have to have a credit card on file. So that made like that transition easier for shipping. So a lot of our customers replied and said, hey, we want you to charge and ship weekly, or just charge and hold until this is all done, right? And so that way we can keep some sort of cash flow. And that was the plan before Diamond shut down. Right, that was kind of the business model we were having. We were open pretty much Monday through Saturday for about 5 hours, so that and everyone, and there's at least one person in each store, mainly the managers, because they're the ones who can sell books the best, right, and can find books and stuff. Because also, like, if somebody called in, we would be like, hey, do you want to check something else out? Because you kind of want to try to hand sell, get a little bit more. Because a lot of it's about surviving, but I think a lot of people were willing to check out new things because they wanted to spend money on us. They wanted us to make sure that we were still around, like we would still be around after this whole thing ends.
It sounds like you had a business model that really kind of would have worked, with a large enough kind of install base that like consistently came back every Wednesday and checked in with the store, that knew, despite the closed sign on the window, that they could come by and you guys could kind of like keep selling books on the fly for a little while. But with like Diamond closing down and no new material coming in, how have you pivoted from that? Are you like, now it's all about back catalog?
We didn't even find out through Diamond. We found out when we had to go pick up our books from the warehouse that we picked up our books. They said, hey, we're getting no more shipments. So we're like, oh, wow, this is pretty crazy. This is the first time. I mean, I've been working there for 15 years, and I've been collecting comics longer, right? This has never happened before, where print comics would not come out. So what we decided to do is we talked it over. We pretty much cut the model of being open Monday through Saturday. And at this point, we had to like tell our employees, hey, we can't give you hours anymore. Like, there's no new books to sell, because most of our business is new books, And we sell a lot of graphic novels every week, right? But I think the chunk of our business is new comics every week, like people coming in every week buying new comics. So with that gone, it's like, well, we have very little that we can. I mean, we'll still sell stuff, but very, the
Right.
main stuff, right, is gone. And so we basically decided to keep only the Winnetka store open, except on Fridays. So the idea is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm there at the shop from 12 to 8, taking phone orders or mail orders, right? And all the customers from all three stores will be basically contacting me, right? Because we don't know how many people are gonna still be calling us and asking for stuff now that there's not any new stuff coming out. And then we're open every day, every Friday, all three stores from 12 to 8. So that we have some hours for those employees over there who will, if they need somebody to do curbside there, we have curbside for them that one day. That's pretty much it. And we kind of hope people will feel bored at home, have read all their comics, are tired of binging their Netflix, and like they want to come and like, man, I really want to read, Why the Last Man. I read the first volume. I need the second one. How can I get it? Like, how can I get it now? And I guess like, if it's a time when we're open, we probably have it and you can come and pick it up, or we can ship it to you.
Do you feel like you guys have a robust enough back catalog of books to sustain like months of this?
It's hard to say. No, I mean, we do a good job of keeping perennials in stock, right? So like things that always sell, stuff like Saga, right? stuff like, I don't know, Batman the Long Halloween, like, things that are evergreen that always sell. So we make it a point to always have those in stock. Now we're also kind of like wary about reordering and getting new things because we don't want to increase our bills, right? At this point, we don't have a lot of bills, or we want to have as little bills as possible. And Diamond shutting down actually helps that out because now we don't have to worry about those bills. But then that's a whole different story.
Right. It seems like a dual-edged blade, right? Like it cuts one way and it cuts the other, which is, if you're not spending money on Diamond, but you also can't get anything in to sell. And everybody I've talked to so far has said that this is a real positive for them, the Diamond shutting down, because they don't have to spend that money. But to me, it seems like, again, I'm an outsider, so, tell me why I'm wrong. To me, it seems very short-sighted, which is like, that might help you out this month, but what's going to happen 3 months from now when you can't get new books in? Yeah. We don't know how long this is going to last, but like all indications seem to think it's not just going to be the next 2 weeks.
Right. So that's like you said, it's a double-edged sword. So like we don't have to worry about paying the bills for that, for these books that would be shipped. It's good because in the long run, like over half the stores are closed, if not more now, right?
Right.
And like they can't even accept the books. Like they're not even there at the shop to get their shipments, right? If they get it mailed to their shop. So it makes sense for them to stop it. But you're right. You should freak out because like, look, this is the first time we haven't had print comics, right? And who knows how long it's going to be. And say it gets fixed in 2 months or a month, or like let's say like we're being really positive. It's like a month and a half or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Will people come back is the question. So you definitely are losing an audience because a lot of stores, I think, rely on the Wednesday warrior, right? The person who comes in every week to get their books. Now, if you cut off that sort of habit, will they come back? And hopefully they do.
The other thing that's, curious, will Marvel and DC stop making new titles and releasing them digitally? How much are they going to cut you guys off at the ankle?
Yeah, so this is like the main concern that we have. Like, I think we can survive having no comics being released for however long Diamond. And, it's not necessarily Diamond's fault. It's their fault for how badly they responded. But I would say they kind of had no choice because I think all of their, like the printers are closing, right? And maybe the supply line for that stuff might get hindered, right? And so I think they knew, and I think publishers knew that their printers weren't going to print anymore. And it's very telling, Marvel and DC really haven't said or done anything, especially DC. DC has said nothing about this whole entire thing. And retailers, I'm part of retailer groups on Facebook and stuff like that. These are, retailers who are probably in the top, 100 of retailers. And, they know what they're talking about generally, right? Unless like there's always that one oddball who's like, dude, what are you saying? But in general, like the people on the retailers on these Facebook groups I'm part of, they know what they're talking about. And they are very angry at DC because like there's no guidance. There's nothing, A lot of it probably has to do with the fact that they fired their main guy, Dan Didio, a month before this, right?
Right. Bad timing.
And he would be, I don't, regardless of what you think of Dan Didio as like a publisher and what he did to your characters, your DC characters, right? I think he was probably positive in terms of like fighting for comic books and print and retailers to like his corporate overlords, right? And so like now that they don't have that, I think there's like a lot of like, I think they just don't care, right? Obviously if they haven't had a response now, they don't care, and that's what we're really weary about. And so like next week in April 1st, are they gonna release books digitally? And that would be like the worst thing possible. There was a statement by, I think, Flying Color Comics, Joe Fields, and he said they should just stop publishing. All the publishers should stop publishing books because if they start doing stuff digitally, they're going to make money in the short term, right? Because they'll get digital sales from this. Like you come to my store, I'll push a book on you for you. You know what I mean? Right. I will say, I will read this book that's kind of random and smaller and maybe get people to read it. Whereas like in the digital market, like who's pushing it? It's just there in front of you. You got to kind of choose it, right? You know what I mean? Like it's like a whole different interface, right? I think the market's completely different for comics in that sense. Yeah. So I hope they don't put out books digitally. I think that would really, really hurt our specialty market, you know?
Yeah, and I don't know what the other option is. Like, do they just choose a day to turn everything back on and suddenly print hundreds of different Marvel issues that all come out on the same day? I mean, like, do I go there and spend $800 in one drop at the comic book shop? I mean, to me, that presents an opportunity for customers to jump off of, half a dozen series that they might be picking up, I dropped Spider-Man during the Clone Saga because every single issue had to be bought and my wallet couldn't afford it. What happens, this is nothing compared to the Clone Saga. And that's saying a lot. Or the other vice versa is what I really mean. But,
right.
I don't see what that option is. Okay. So here's an idea I had, and I may just cut this out of the podcast, but I'm going to float this at you and tell me how ridiculous this idea is. Is there a realm where Marvel and DC do acknowledge what you just said, and they start allowing these comic shops to sell digital purchases that would eventually be tied to a real world copy of an issue when ultimately this thing is over? So you could buy digital things through another interface and pick up your book at the store. Almost the opposite of what's going on right now, where you buy a Marvel comic and you get a digital code with it. Is that completely out of this world insane?
I think it's a pretty cool idea. It's a kind of idea that's been floated around where, like, maybe they can offer digital things and we get a cut of it, right? And they actually used to do that. I think Comixology used to do that. If we had a link in our website and we linked people, and if people clicked on that link, right, kind of like an Amazon button, whatever, right, it would take them to Comixology, and whatever they bought, we get a percentage of. That used to be a thing. That's when, and we in our website you used to do that, but we don't do that anymore because it didn't really matter. It didn't give us any money. I think digital right now, I mean, before this whole crisis, seemed like it was just whatever. No, it wasn't really going up in the marketplace. It was actually trending downward, and print was actually going up, especially graphic novels. But your idea, I think it's cool. I think it's actually very interesting, especially like at least for like this emergency moment, right? Like,
I just think we're trying to save your guys' jobs, and we're trying to save this medium that we love, at least the print version of it. But at the same time, you look at Marvel and DC, and they're trying to save the jobs of their employees, right? If they stop using comics, what are they doing, with all this time?
But you know what? Marvel is owned by Disney, that has a bunch of money.
It's true.
I mean, whatever you think in terms of politics, they probably have the money to keep Marvel and its employees afloat for a month or two. I'm pretty sure. And I would argue the same thing for DC as well, with like AT&T and right. Like, so I would be more concerned about like the smaller publishers like Boom and Image and Dark Horse. They're the ones that might be struggling over this. Marvel and DC, who have the most power, are the one, and who should be leaders here, aren't leaders. And I think that's the main issue, right? Like, they're not really taking a leadership role here. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they are there's too much bureaucracy in their system, right?
Right.
There's too much corporate sort of like, you have to get approvals and all this stuff. So I think that's why they're not responding, which is, like, I guess an excuse, but I don't think it's a good enough excuse, right? They should be trying to do something to help fix this industry. And like I said, your idea is cool, but I think the problem is, how do you do it logistically, right? Like,
well, that's the $1 million question, right?
Yeah. So like, I mean, you can, I guess what they can do theoretically is they would, like, maybe it's a Marvel app, right? In the Marvel app, it would say something like, hey, are you part of this store? Like, maybe like some sort of login or some sort of promo code, like Collector's Paradise promo code, right? And if you put that promo code, then that's how it would work, right? Theoretically.
Right. It would be the opposite of what you're doing now, which is like, you're saying, like, I want a guaranteed, like, hard copy of this by buying it digitally that will be delivered to. I mean, that's a huge infrastructure, but like if they are committed to helping you guys stay afloat, which I think is in their business interest as well, as you were saying, then I think that something you want to consider.
Right. Well, the thing is, it's in Marvel Publishing and DC Comics Publishing's interest, but I don't know if it's in the interests of like Disney overall, when like Marvel's such a blip. Although like there's something to be said about having something that, to make money off of, but like what's it called? It's like when you have a
dedicated
place for
fan
ideas.
base. Yeah, right. Marvel is the house of ideas, right?
Yeah,
so,
and it's a place for ideas. Like, where do you think all these movies came from that made you billions of dollars? Well, it came from these books, right?
Yeah.
I think sometimes they forget that. I think like Disney forgets that the reason Marvel's, is such a big thing is they took a bunch of great source material,
I mean, I had Tom Brevoort on my show just the other night, and he suggested very much the opposite, that they're very keenly aware of that. And that they see it as a very, big part of their interest. But, he also seemed to kind of project doom and gloom more than I expected him to publicly on a show. So, it's very curious to me. But that being said, I used to work at Midtown Comics in New York, and I've spent, my time in various comic stores, and people love to kind of like, people involved in comics are so precious about comics, and specifically the print medium for comics, that like we project the end of comics every other week. I mean, if I had to read another, like another headline of the end of comics is coming, or Jim Lee goes to San Diego Comic-Con and screams into the rafters about the end of comics, they're a dime a dozen. Do you feel like this is an actual threat to the medium in the current state that it's in? I mean, comics won't go anywhere, right? Movies have become Netflix in a way, but like, for those of us who cling to the printed page, do you think this actually could pose an existential threat?
So I think I mentioned this before, but this is the first time we've never had print comics, right? So I think every week of my comic book like buying life and working life, there was always comics every Wednesday, unless it was like a random, like it fell on Christmas or something like that, right? So like Wednesday was always a day where new comics are, and so this is going to be the first time in who knows ever where we don't have books, and I think that is something to think about, right? And I want to be more positive about it, and I think our store will survive. Our stores will survive, hopefully, in the long run, But then, okay, we survive, and then everything's, quote unquote, back to normal. I don't know. Will people come? Like I said already, like will people come back? And that's something you have to think about as a retailer. And I think, the response from a lot of our customers saying like, hey, we want to, like people who like probably have enough reading material, they are even like buying more stuff and adding extra stuff just because they want to help out. We sent a link out for gift cards, and we got a bunch of people buying gift cards like for when we're open again, they can use the gift cards then, So that's like the positive side of it. So like we do have our customers who really want us to be around and survive. So I think that shows that it's not so bad in the long run. But at the same time, we also have this thing where like it's never happened before, where there are no new books. It's so strange. And I really hope, I do think that if Marvel and DC decide to continue to put out books, it could be, I'll give it a 60% chance of most comic book stores, like it could be, we could see the dominoes falling on the end of specialty markets. I do see that. If they decide not to have our backs, right, then it could be pretty bad. And this is what's going to happen, right? So like say the stores that survive, they're going to be so mad at Marvel and DC for releasing books, right, digitally, that we'll order less of their books. Right, we'll be like, screw them. Like they didn't support us. We're not going to order. And I'm seeing that a lot from retailer groups. Right, I don't know if we're going to do that. We'll see. We often think more pragmatically than emotionally.
Right.
You try to. You have to be as a business. And I feel like I'm definitely going to cut my orders anyways, especially because of like this lack of response from DC. Like regardless, right? And so. Yeah, it really is. And so like continuing on with this idea of like stores cutting down from Marvel and DC will say, oh, they're not supporting us anymore. And so like,
Yeah.
it's like this, I guess it's like a back and forth and like a domino effect that could lead to them being, well, screw them. We'll just focus on more digital stuff. Look how well we did when when we were putting out books digitally a month ago, when they were closed. So yeah, it's very interesting. I think a lot of it is on what Diamond plans to do in the future, but also what Marvel and DC are going to do with their publishing line. Are they going to stop it? I hope they do. That's what I think most retailers hope they don't publish digitally. Definitely.
And what's the deadline for that, you think? Like, when do you think that news would surface?
I thought it would happen today.
Yeah.
It's the 24th, right? So I thought it would happen Monday. I thought it would happen, today. They probably won't say anything till Monday, I bet you. And maybe they won't say anything until we find out, oh, you can get these books. Like, I think digital books are released Tuesday night or whatever, Tuesday midnight or whatever. If like we see those books up there, that could also be how we find out, right? We can find out that way.
That would be not cool.
Oh, it would be really messed up. But like I said, the response from Marvel's response was, give us a higher discount. Well, guess what? Books aren't getting shipped, and they probably knew books weren't getting shipped, right? And and so like, well, that discount doesn't matter, right? Because there's no books to get discounted, an extra discount on. And DC, like I said, hasn't said anything. So we'll see what they do.
Well, Nick, I would love to check back in with you later as this continues to develop. In the meantime, let's say some of our listeners are Angelinos like myself and wanted to go and check out Collector's Paradise. How might they do that, and how might they follow you?
Yeah, so we have 3 stores in the Los Angeles area, one in Pasadena, one in the West Valley or Winnetka, right? And one in North Hollywood. Right now we have weird schedules, so the timing is really weird, but yeah, feel free to come by. You can call our stores, and we're currently doing mail order and curbside, so they can do that. And yeah, I don't really do a lot of social media, so there's nothing really to promote. I do a podcast with Kevin, who's the manager of our NoHo store, called the Comic Marauders Podcast. Check it out on Podbean or iTunes. We just review the most recent books, about 3 books a week. Just give our opinions. If you want, I don't often lie when I'm selling books to customers, but I also don't like bash a book hard, right?
Yeah.
But if you want to hear me bash a book that I really hate, which happens once in I don't know, maybe every other episode, there's like a book that I don't like, then you can get like a truer opinion. But obviously, I'm not going to sell you a book that I don't think that isn't good. So keep that in mind too.
Well, Nick, that's why I come to your shop every week. So thanks again for coming on the show. This was a really pleasure to have you. Let's do it again under a more rosy picture.
Yeah. Sounds good, man. Thank you.
Thanks again to Nick for talking to me so honestly about his shop and the comics industry. I learned a ton while talking to him, but my journey wasn't yet complete. So I decided to head back to the west side of Los Angeles and talk with my friend Eddie D'Angelini, the co-owner of Heidi Ho Comics in Santa Monica, to see how he was hanging in there. Well, welcome back, listeners. I am lucky to be joined today by Eddie D'Angelini from Heidi Ho Comics. Welcome to the show, Eddie.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Eddie, I've been a big fan of yours for a long time. I've been reading your collector's comic strip for nearly a decade. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's been about, I think, 6.5 years that I've been doing it. It's a web comic called Collectors, all about me and my wife and my comic book collecting and all the nerdy stuff she puts up with living with me. And it's loosely based on real life, but also done in like a very fun newspaper Sunday style comic strip. And I've been doing that pretty much almost as long as we've owned Heidi Ho.
That's so great. So Heidi Ho Comics, you're here with me in lockdown LA. Tell us a little bit about your store, like where it's located and what makes your store special. What do you guys do?
Well, Heidi Ho Comics is in Santa Monica, California, and it is one of the oldest comic shops in LA and I think even, the entire country. It's been in existence for over 40 years, originally started by 2 brothers, Bob and Mark Hennessy. And I've been the co-owner of it with 2 other partners for about 5.5 years now. And my wife and I, we're the ones that actively manage the shop as well as co-own it. And it's pretty much the only comic shop really there on the west side in the Santa Monica area. We're kind of known, it's got a history for being very kind of hip and independent. It really catered to a lot of more indie comics throughout the years, not just Marvel and DC. We do get a lot of, what's really nice is we do get a lot of industry people in the movie industry and TV industry that shop there, just frequent the place, pop in every once in a while. So it has a kind of very unique LA kind of vibe to it.
Have you always worked in the comic book industry, or is that some kind of like a new venture with Heidi Ho?
No, I haven't, but I've been in it for a while now, even before we owned the shop. One of my partners is Jeffrey Patterson, who owns Jeffrey's Comics in Gardena, California, which is the second oldest comic shop in Southern California. And I worked for him running his eBay store for that shop. And then from there, we went on to purchase Heidi Ho.
So does Heidi Ho have like a good balance between kind of back issues and more current wall rack fare, or is it mostly modern stuff you have circling in and out?
No, it's a pretty good mix. I mean, obviously we have a good selection of all the new stuff that comes out every week, but we also do have our more recent back issue section. And then we also have the part that I really like, which is the older Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age stuff that you see up on the wall shelves when you walk in. And we have a lot more as well in locked cases and also in the back. And that's usually a lot of the stuff that we feature in our eBay store, which is also now more than ever a crucial part of our monthly income.
I was going to say those old issues are as good as gold these days. It's the golden age for a reason now.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that market is very key issue driven, and some key issues can go for a lot of money now.
Yeah, very cool. Well, we're here to talk obviously about the kind of giant elephant or gorilla, whatever the metaphor is in the room, the coronavirus and its kind of impact on our favorite LCS stores or local comic shops. I guess I'm curious, Heidi Ho, I'm sure you have a really kind of rock solid business strategy, and just following you online, you've been doing these great videos to advertise what you're doing now, but can you talk us through kind of the stages of progression for you? Like, we're talking now, it's March 26th, Thursday, and, every day brings with it new surprises. What's been your kind of like slow unraveling here of how this crisis has played out as it affects you and your shop?
Well, my wife and I have talked about it for a little while now, and I also talked about it with my partner before this whole lockdown situation. And we were really kind of thinking that this might just be the worst case scenario and maybe something that might not happen, but maybe we should be ready for it. My big concern before all this happened, as far as everything shutting down, was our shop, the Santa Monica area, is very touristy driven. We've got about 5, maybe 6 months out of the year, all around summer, that is our big tourist season. So we get a lot of business from that. I mean, we have people coming in our shop spending quite a bit of money from different states, different countries during those months. And our first inkling when this started to happen, our first worry was, this is going to affect tourist season. And I was reading a lot of things that the Santa Monica city was putting out regarding their predictions for the year and the tourist season, which they do a lot. And I was really seeing those numbers going down and down and down. And I was really worried. And I was thinking, we need to maybe come up with some type of plan to make sure we get through those months and ride this out. And little did I know it would be riding out all of this with the doors locked, which I really thought that's a worst case scenario. It's probably not going to happen, but here we are, and it did.
So is that where you're at now? I've talked to several people and they've been doing curbside, but then recently the police have kind of showed up and made that an impossibility. So are you at the point now that the doors are locked and there's not really even the option to crack them open for mail delivery?
Well, I hadn't heard about the police cracking down on anybody for curbside. I mean, I know that there's some gray area about whether shops can do that. But, I'm reading news about big stores, chain stores like Michael's and stuff. They're doing that. So they're still doing it. We've been doing curbside and we've been doing mail order. Like, for instance, yes, Diamond did say they were going to stop shipping new books, but all the shops did get the books for this week. But obviously the doors are closed and we can't sell them. So we literally have been calling all of our pull customers, literally one by one by one by one, and giving them the option to either pay by phone or pay online, sending them online invoice to pay for their pulls. And we've been pretty much gathering and telling everybody, hey, pretty much all you people who have not just this week's pull, but other weeks previous, we're putting it together and saying, now's the time we really want you guys to clear out your pull and help us out more than ever. This is what you can really do to help us. And we've really have been gotten such a good response from all the customers who really want to help us. A lot of them have been tacking on gift certificates to the order to help us out. And for the most part, most of the people don't want to leave their house, so they've elected to have the stuff shipped to them, which now we've become basically like a giant mail order warehouse in the shop now. But there are some people that are still local in the area that have chosen to pretty much stop by. And now that, it used to be where you could never even find a parking spot on the street in Santa Monica. And now it's like people are literally able to pull right up to the front door and park. And yeah, so I've, been trying to avoid as much contact with customers or them coming in the shop or anything like that at all. I've literally just been walking out and either handing it to them or putting it through their passenger window on their passenger seat, and just trying to make it as quick and simple and with no contact at all.
Well, it's funny you say that because your video that you produce, I keep mentioning this video, you made a video advertising, what the store is going to be doing moving forward. And I'll put a link to it in our show notes. But was one of the first real signs to me of like just kind of visual indicators that the world has changed. Seeing you go through the comics with gloves on was like, it just like, it immediately struck me like, yeah, we really, obviously the signs of this are everywhere, but seeing it kind of like in such a microcosm of like the comics world and how we leaf through comics, it's like, oh yeah, like shops that I frequent, I'm going to begin seeing all these changes.
Sure.
And so, Diamond made this announcement, right? Kind of like it seemed like it slipped out, like it was leaked, and then they kind of had to jump on it. I've seen a variety of reactions online from people prognosticating the end of print comics to, I actually had several people on the show who thought it was a really good thing because it allowed them to not have to make future purchases in the blind, but at the same time, you can't really stock up on stuff that might get you through the mail season that we seem to be going into where you're shipping stuff out to people. Where do you land on that? Like what are your thoughts about it and anxieties perhaps?
Well, I am kind of on the fence because I can see both sides, good and bad. I'm a little upset that they did decide to do this because we were pretty much ready to go to a full-on turn into telemarketers calling all of our pull customers and shipping stuff out. We were all fully prepared to do that. At the same time, I totally see and get the idea of putting it on pause and letting shops have a break from having to pay that that weekly Diamond invoice when they don't really have a way to sell the merchandise. I get that. It really now, with no new books coming in, it really now gives us a little bit of pause to think about, well, we got to really figure out how we're going to sell the merchandise we do have. And we have a store full of stuff. And, there's ways to do this. My wife and I have been brainstorming for the past couple of days what we're going to do to start moving what we do have. And the truth is, we've got a wall of shelves of trade paperbacks of stuff that I know that a lot of our customers have never read, that I know that they'll love. And you know what? There won't be like a new comics day, but it can still be like a new to you comics day. Try some new stuff that you haven't heard about or maybe you meant to read but never got to. And, we've got a selection of board games too that we can push and say, hey, here's something to keep you busy when you're stuck at home. So it's just being a little more creative and starting to showcase the stuff that you already have in your shop.
So like I said, it's Thursday, March 26th. And, just yesterday was the last day of new comics, at least to my understanding. Or is it April 1st? I'm not really sure.
No, we were told that, sorry to interrupt, but we were told when we picked up the shipment, I pick up my stuff. We were told this is the last week that you guys are going to get.
So, that happened and, we're still kind of waiting. The big news, like the big question, in regards to the future of comics, is what happens if Marvel and DC continue, because it seems like Image is putting their stuff on pause, or at least they seem to be indicating that all of the smaller publishers who can't really afford, like they're going to, I expect that we're going to see several small publishers close up shop, because of this, or at least be impacted in some way. The big two who can be leaders on this seem to be kind of silent. Now, Marvel put out this blog post listing comic book stores that are still open and the kind of new tactics that they're taking, curbside service, things like that. I know like the comic shop that I shop at was listed on there. Oh, actually incorrectly. We're waiting to hear what they're going to be doing. Are they going to be releasing digital, comics? What are your feelings about this? And if whether they go ahead or whether they stop?
Well, as far as them doing digital, I can't say that I love the idea of it, but at the same time, I don't see that impacting me very much, because I know that a lot of my regulars that come every Wednesday or come every week to buy the new stuff, they're going to want the print versions. Even if they do read the digitals, which I don't think a lot of them are, they're still going to come after all this blows over and buy the copies of the stuff that they read digitally. So for me personally, just my shop, I can't say that it worries me that much.
What do you think that looks like? Do we get a Wednesday where 4 months of books just suddenly show up and people are having to reach into their wallets to cover that up? Or if you had to take a guess?
My best guess is that however long this goes for, a month, 2 months, they're just going to, I think, probably push everything back that long, or maybe at least half that long. So maybe books that come out monthly for just a short while might come out every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Or something to that effect. I do not see them swamping the market all at once, because that is a surefire way to make sure that those things just don't sell.
Yeah, 100%. It's just such an odd scenario. Like whatever they come up with is going to be flawed in some way. Yeah. So I
don't think there's any way around that. I think no matter what Diamond does, no matter what Marvel or DC does, no matter what the individual comic shop owners do, there's going to be flaws, because this is completely something new that no one has ever had to deal with before. And everyone's kind of just guessing as to what the best thing is to do. And they're going to do things wrong. I just see that happening, and there's no way around that.
If there's one thing I do know, I think it's that comic buyers are resilient people. We've stuck with comics in the industry for such a long time. I think we're all very precious about this medium and we don't want it to go anywhere. But I think, in my estimation, we're all going to be there the week that it reopens to kind of swamp the stores and proclaim the things that we love back in action. At least that's my hope.
I agree. I think there's going to be a lot of griping when the doors do open again, but people are still going to want their comics. They're going to gripe about it, but they'll buy their titles they want, and they'll be happy to be back, I'm sure.
Yeah. So Eddie, what are you going to be reading in the meantime? What are you telling people to read? What's exciting you right now?
I'm trying to catch up on the huge pile of stuff on my nightstand. And the one series that I've loved from the very beginning but fell off pretty quickly because I just didn't have the time to get through it is Immortal Hulk. I just absolutely love that series, but I'm way, way, way behind. And I tell people the surefire way to never have time to read comics is own a comic book shop. So the day we had to close, that Friday, I took every trade of that book and I'm going to read it all the way through. And already now that I'm doing it, being able to read it all in one shot, I can pick up all the stuff that I didn't pick up waiting month to month to month. Because you know how it is. You read so many things, and then the next month you've already forgotten what you read last month.
Well, that book demands it. There's no recap pages in that book. It is just like hardcore, old school Marvel comics all the way through. With like buckets of gore and stuff that I don't think Marvel has ever printed before layered in there.
I'm hoping to catch up on some things also that I never really read before. Like suddenly I'm kind of like finding a newfound interest in Harvey Pekar.
Yeah, that's perfect for a break.
Yeah. And our shop has a history with underground comics. The original owners were friends with a lot of underground comics creators and distributors, and had a lot of those people, the creators, as guests in those early days and back in the late 70s and throughout the 80s. So there's a real connection of that with our shop. And I kind of really want to try to read more of that stuff now. So I'm taking the time to do that.
That sounds great. Well, Eddie, if people wanted to kind of follow you in your store, how would they do so?
Check us out at HeidiHoComics.com. We actually, through this break with no comics, we're going to have a page on there where each week we're going to feature different items that maybe you haven't checked out and should, and you can reserve copies of it online. You can check us out at Heidi Ho Comics. You can find us, Heidi Ho Comics, on Facebook and Instagram as well. And we're going to be posting on our social media different videos featuring maybe titles that you've missed, or maybe titles that tie into movies that maybe we think you should check out, or also books for local creators or all ages books. So we're really going to go back into our own inventory and really start featuring things that maybe we think that you should check out that you might have missed.
Sounds great. Well, Eddie, I wish you safety and health, and I look forward to seeing you standing tall at Heidi Ho Comics when this is all over. We'll grab a beer and go talk about comics sometime.
Definitely, and stay safe.
And with that, my journey for this week came to an end. I want to thank you for listening and all my guests for taking the time to talk to me. So if you live near Arsenal Comics and Games, Anyone Comics, Collector's Paradise, or Heidi Ho Comics, make sure you reach out and help them weather this storm. And if you don't live near them, go support your own local comic shop. Our comic dealers need our support now more than ever. Give them a ring, check out what kind of services they offer, and help keep this medium we love alive. But also, I want to hear from you about your feelings on this. What are your local shops doing to get comics in your hands? How are you planning on weathering the crisis? I want to know it all. So give me a ring. Call our voicemail line 9 Red Goblin and leave us a message with your name and where you're calling from, and I'll feature it on an upcoming show. Again, that's 9 Red Goblin to leave us a message. Additionally, don't forget to subscribe to this show, The Amazing Spider Talk, and to follow me on Twitter at @SupSpiderTalk for my thoughts on all things comics and Spider-Man. And on that note, I hope you're all staying safe and healthy and living by our motto that with great podcasts, there must also come The Amazing Spider Talk.
That's the next installment